I want to ask you something, and I want you to sit with it before you answer. When they told you that you could have it all, did anyone ever stop and ask if that's what you actually wanted? Did anyone sit down with you, your mother, your teacher, our culture, and say, here's all your options. Here's what each one is going to cost you. Here's what each one is going to give you. What do you want? Or did it just get decided? Did the culture just sort of absorb you? Did you find yourself one day exhausted, overscheduled, chronically depleted, beating yourself up over every single thing that you weren't, and wonder, how did we get here? Because I did. And I think a lot of you do that as well. In this episode, I want to talk about all the things we were promised, about what we actually got in return, and about what we lost along the way, quietly, without anyone announcing it, and about what it might mean to want something different. Thank you for joining my Real Housewife of Alaska podcast. I'm taking you on my journey from corporate dropout to homesteading here in Alaska, getting back to nature, reclaiming my health and happiness, and hopefully showing my journey along the way, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I know one of the things that have really been on my mind is this idea that women can do it all. So let's go back. Not all the way, just far enough. Let us go back to the moment, sometime in the second half of the 20th century, when the culture shifted. When the message to women changed. And I want to be clear right from the start, because this is a nuanced conversation and I'm not interested in being misread. The feminist movement fought for things that mattered: equal pay, the right to property, the right to be in a room, the right to take up space, and the right to be taken seriously in that space that had for centuries excluded women. Those fights were necessary. Many of them are still being fought today. But here's where I think something went wrong. Something in that movement, somewhere between the necessary fight for equal rights and the culture that emerged on the other side of it, the message shifted. It stopped being you have the right to choose and become this is what a woman of value chooses. The boardroom became the aspiration. The home became a consolation prize. And a generation of women, brilliant, well-meaning women who wanted more for their daughters than they had for themselves, started quietly communicating something to their girls. I know I did. Not always in words, but in the way that we talked about ambition, in the way that we talked about success, and in what they celebrated and what they dismissed. The message was clear even when it was unspoken. Smart girls go out into the world. Smart girls build careers. Smart girls don't get stuck at home. And so we didn't. We went out into the world. We built careers. We became every woman, or at least we tried. And here we are, exhausted, chronically ill, at a rate our grandmothers never knew, beating ourselves up daily for all the things we are not, for the meals we didn't cook from scratch, for the traditions we didn't keep, for the homes that feel more like hotels than sanctuaries, for the children who grew up too fast because we were too busy to slow down, for the skills we never learned because nobody taught them to us. Sure, our grandmothers lent a skill here or there, but no longer was culture to pass it down. And somewhere underneath all of this exhaustion, a question we were never allowed to ask. Did I actually want this? All of it? Was this my dream? Or did I just never stop running long enough to question? Why would I want it all? Now, let's talk about our grandmothers. I know I miss my Nana every day. And not to romanticize their lives, because they worked hard. I know my Nana came from nothing, an immigrant in this country. Some of them worked in ways that were not chosen. Some of them had limitations we rightly fought against. I'm not asking to pretend that the past was perfect, but I am asking you to look clearly at what they knew and what we lost when we decided their knowledge wasn't worth keeping. Your grandmother, or her mother, depending on your age, knew things that are almost entirely gone from everyday life now. She knew how to preserve food. It wasn't a hobby, not an anesthetic, not as a Pinterest project, as a necessity, as a strategy, as an act of love that stretched across seasons. She put up food in August so her family could eat in February. She knew which jars were in her larder. She knew how long it kept. She knew how to feed people through the hard winters and what she'd grown and preserved with her own two hands. This is not a small skill. This is food security. That's a resource management skill. That is a form of intelligence our culture stopped valuing and then stopped teaching. In 1943, during World War II, 75% of American households had a garden that they ate out of. 3 out of 4 families grew their own food. As a matter of national pride, as a matter of survival. And by 2023, fewer than 8% of us grow our own food. Now, on top of that, your grandmother knew how to make clothes. I know my Nana did. Not just sewing buttons, not just fixing holes in socks. And today, fewer than 30% of us can sew. But making something from fabric, mending what's broke, altering what didn't fit, creating warmth from raw materials, man, that is something that our grandmothers knew. And they could stretch a budget, wasted nothing. That chicken carcass became bone broth. The vegetable scraps became compost. The worn out sheets became cleaning rags. American households now throw away 30 to 40% of the food they purchase. My Nana wasted nothing. She knew about herbs and plants. She never went to the doctor, wasn't sick a day in her life. She was the first line of defense for our family's health. She knew what grew in her yard, what was good for her, and how to remedy a cough or a wound. That knowledge passed woman to woman for centuries is now classified as alternative medicine. It's nearly disappeared in a single generation. She knew her neighbors, not just their names, but their situations, their needs, who had extra, who needed help, when to show up, and what to bring. That's a community infrastructure built by women, sustained by women, maintained through the daily, unglamorous, unpaid, uncelebrated work of paying attention to the people around you. We outsource that now. She kept the traditions. She was the one who remembered, who made the things that got made every year at Christmas, who made the recipes that came from her mother's mother, who gathered the family and created the rituals that made a collection of people feel like they belonged to each other. She was the keeper of memory, the architect of belonging, and we called what she did not working. We called it staying home, like home was somewhere you stayed when you had nowhere better to be. Like the work she did inside, it didn't count because it didn't come with a paycheck. Here's what I want to say. Running a household is not simple. It's not mindless. It is not less than. It is logistics and nutrition and medicine and education and financial management and community relations and emotional labor and creativity, problem solving, all happening simultaneously every single day for the people you love most in this world. And we decided that wasn't enough. We decided she wasn't enough. And in doing so, we decided her knowledge wasn't worth keeping. And then we lost it. And here we are today, unknowing, running around, calendars packed. And here's what bothers me the most about all of this, is it wasn't a choice. Not really, not for most of us. Most of us, the culture shifted. The economy shifted. And this is important. The economy shifted in a way that made a single income incredibly insufficient. So women went to work, not just because they wanted to, but because by the 80s or 90s, they often had to. And then a strange thing happened. The necessity became ideology. What started as we need two incomes to survive became a woman who stays home is wasting herself. And the skills that had sustained families for generations got reclassified. Growing food, quaint. Preserving food, old-fashioned. Making clothes, a craft fair hobby. Keeping a home with intention and artistry, not a real job. Raising children with your own full presence, something you did if you couldn't hack it out there. And the women who chose those things, chose their career, who chose to make the home their domain, got a very clear message from culture that they were less, that they had settled, that they were not living up to their potential. A 2019 study found that stay-at-home mothers were rated lower in competency by both men and women than mothers who worked outside the home. We didn't just devalue the work, we devalued the women doing it. And so the knowledge stopped being passed down. Not because our mothers were cruel, because they were trying to protect us from a culture that had decided domestic skills was embarrassing. They wanted something better for us. They wanted us to be taken seriously. And the price of being taken seriously was abandoning the knowledge that had kept families alive and fed and connected for centuries. Here's what that cost us. Over 60% of adults under 40 cannot prepare meals entirely from scratch. The average American meal travels 1,500 miles before it reaches a plate. The USDA had to specifically refund the National Center for Home Food Preservation in the 1990s because the knowledge of how to safely preserve food was at risk of being lost entirely. In one generation, we came within one generation of losing the ability to feed ourselves from our own hands. And we were too busy empowering women to notice. So now I want to talk about what this has done to us, because I don't think we connect these dots often enough. We talk about the mental health crisis. We talk about chronic illness epidemics. We talk about the anxiety and the depression and the autoimmune disorders that are showing up in women at rates that are frankly staggering. And we look for answers in medicine, in diagnosis and treatment protocols, and those things matter. I'm not dismissing them, but I want to ask a harder question. What happens to a human being, specifically a woman, when she spends decades living completely disconnected from the rhythms that sustained her ancestors? What happens when you never put your hands in soil? When you never grow something and watch it come to life? When you never preserve food or make something from raw ingredients or create something tangible with your own two hands? What happens when your life entirely in your head, in screens and schedules and performances, and never, ever in your body? What happens when you run at full speed for 20 or 30 years and never once ask yourself if this is actually what you wanted? Here's what the research says. Women now make up nearly 60% of all autoimmune disease diagnosis. Autoimmune disease, where the body turns on itself, where the immune system, designated to protect you, starts attacking the tissue it was built to defend. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that is the body's response to a life lived in permanent opposition to itself. In 2023, a poll found that 56% of working mothers report feeling chronically overwhelmed, not occasionally stressed, chronically overwhelmed as a baseline state of existence. And burnout among women has reached epidemic levels, with women reporting burnout at significantly higher rates than men across every industry and every stage of life. We're tired. We're not sleepy, tired, bone tired, soul crushing tired, the kind of tired that doesn't respond to a weekend off or a vacation or a new productivity system. The kind of tired that comes from spending years performing a version of yourself that was never really you. From chasing a definition of success that someone else wrote. From trying to be every woman and slowly, quietly losing the woman you actually were in the process. And here's the cruelest part. We collapse under that weight. When our bodies give out, or our minds give up, or we simply cannot sustain the pace anymore, we blame ourselves. We say, I should be stronger. I should be better. I should be able to do this because other women are doing it. We don't say, this system was designed without my humanity in mind. We do not say, I was handed a definition of success that was never built to sustain a whole person. We do not say, I was lied to. We just say, try harder. And then we try harder again until we can't. I want to say something directly to the women who is in that place right now. You are not weak. You are not failing. You are exhausted from running a race you never agreed to enter, toward a finish line that keeps moving, in shoes that were never meant for your feet. That is not a personal failure. That is a cultural one. And it is time we named it. It is time we call it out. And it is time we accept that we belong in a pace that allows us to live and grow. Let's talk about what we've actually lost, not just the statistics, in feeling. I want you to think about a home you knew growing up, or a home you had heard about. A grandmother's house, a great aunt's kitchen, a neighbor whose door was always open. You know the one I mean. The house that smelled like something was always cooking. And family dinners were held every Sunday without fail. The house where the table meant something, where sitting down together wasn't optional, it wasn't rushed, it wasn't eating in front of a screen. The house where the traditions lived. I know I lived in those sorts of houses, where you know exactly what happened at Christmas and what happened at Easter and what happened when somebody got sick and somebody got married or somebody passed, where the rituals were real and repeated and yours. The house where the women were at the center. She knew how to feed 20 people without panicking. She knew how to stretch what she had. She knew how to make something from almost nothing, and it always tasted like love. She knew who needed what. She knew when something was wrong before you even said a word. She remembered everything. The birthdays, the preferences, the stories, the history of the family, stretching back further than you could imagine. She was the keeper. She kept the food, she kept the traditions, she kept the memories, she kept the people connected to each other across time and distance and disagreements. She kept the home full, not of things, but of meaning. And we looked at that woman, that extraordinary, skilled, irreplaceable woman, and we told her she wasn't enough. We told her she was wasting herself. We told our daughters not to end up like her, and our daughters listened. And now we live in houses that are full of things and empty of meaning. We eat meals that travel 1,500 miles before they make it to our table. Don't taste like anything particular. They certainly don't taste like love. We have forgotten how to preserve food, make clothes, grow medicine, keep traditions, and hold on to memories. We have outsourced our competence and called it convenience. We have outsourced our presence and we've called it ambition, and we wonder in the quiet moments, in the 2 a.m. moments, in the moments when the performance drops and we're just alone with ourselves, we wonder why everything feels so thin. Why there's so much stuff and so little substance. Why are we so connected and so lonely? Why we have achieved so much and feel like we have so little, I think we know why. I think we've maybe always known. We just weren't allowed to say it out loud. Not in today's culture. But you know what? I was blessed with a grandmother and a mother who taught me things, real things. How to grow and preserve food, how to keep a garden, how to move through the home on purpose, with intention. I grew up in Alaska, and the first time I knew what intentional living looked like, I watched it every day through my mother and through my grandmother. Eventually, when I was 15, we moved to Washington State, and this pace of life swallowed me whole. Not dramatically, not all at once, just gradually. The way a rat race always works. The pace picked up. The expectations expanded. The career built momentum. And the things my mother and grandmother had taught me went quiet. Not because I rejected them, but because I was living in a world that had no use for them, no room for them, and certainly no respect for them. I spent years performing a version of success that looked impressive from outside and felt hollow in the inside. I was achieving things, but was I building anything? The achievement was external. It happened out there. It gets measured and validated and rewarded by systems that exist outside of you. Building is something you do with your hands, with your presence, with your attention over time. Building is a garden. It's preserved jar of something you grew, a meal from scratch, a tradition you keep, a memory you created deliberately, because you understood that memories don't just happen. Someone has to make them. When I moved back to Alaska, it gave me that full understanding. Alaska strips the performance away. Winters don't care about your resume. The ground doesn't care about your achievements. And Alaska asks one single question every single day. What are you actually building? And so as we dive into our journey of building a sustainable homestead on our 10 acres, I knew the answer. I'm building a life that means something. I'm building a place where food is grown and preserved and shared, where traditions are kept and memories are made on purpose, where the skills of my mother and my grandmother gave me finally come to life, where I can slow down and carefully and intentionally spend the remaining of my years living in a real home. I want to be careful here because I'm not telling you to quit your job. I'm not telling you to abandon your career or your ambition or your hard work or all that ground that you covered was wrong. I'm not telling you that you have to go back, because honestly, we can't go back in time. I'm telling you this, The pendulum has swung too far. And we are living in the wreckage of it. And the reclamation that is needed right now, it's not political. It's not ideology. It is deeply, simply, urgently personal. It is the decision to stop measuring your worth entirely by what you produce outside of your home. It is the decision to reclaim the skills that sustained your grandmother and mother before her. Not as a hobby, not as a Pinterest project, as a genuine act of resistance against a culture that decided competence in the home was worthless. It is the decision to slow down enough to actually be present in your own life, to feed the people you love with food and understanding, to keep the traditions that make your family feel like a family, to be the keeper, because someone has to be. And here is what the research actually tells us about what happens when we do. The cottage food movement, home food productions and preservation has grown 400% since 2020. Women are coming back to this, not because they have to, but because they remember something. Children who regularly cook with their grandparents or parents are twice as likely to make healthy food choices as adults. These are skills of sharing, and it's one of the strongest predictors of resilience in children. Not tutoring, not screens, a person who loves them, teaching them something real with their own hands, being present. And a woman who reports high levels of domestic engagement, cooking, growing, preserving, creating in the home, report significantly higher levels of daily meaning than women who are entirely disconnected from those practices. Not because the home is all they are, but because making something real with your hands, feeding people you love from ingredients you understand, tending a space with intention and care, these things connect us to something ancient and true and deeply human, something that no career advancement and no productivity app and no achievement metric can replicate. Something our grandmothers knew in their bones that we have spent 2 generations unlearning, and that we are now slowly, urgently, with a hunger, starting to remember. That home our grandmothers kept was not small. It was not a limitation. It was not a consolation prize for women who couldn't hack it in the real world. It was the center, the place where people were fed and healed and held, where traditions lived and memories were made, where the knowledge that sustained families across generations was practiced and passed down and kept alive. It was tended to by women of extraordinary skills and intelligence and dedication. Women who never got performance reviews. Women who never got a promotion. Women who just showed up every single day and made sure the people they loved had what they needed. We told those women they weren't enough. We told our daughters not to end up like them. And we are living now with the consequences of that lie. Exhausted, disconnected, aching for something we can't quite name. It's time to reclaim it, to build a life, and a place and a practice that says, this matters. Growing food matters. Preserving food matters. Making things with your hands matter. Keeping traditions matter. Being present in your home and your family and your community with intention and skill and love matters. It always has mattered. We just forgot. And I really believe this. We are ready to remember. Having it all was never the dream. The dream was a full life. A life that smelled like something, that tasted like something, that meant something. A life with dirt under its fingernails and bread in the oven and a table worth sitting down to. That was always the dream. We just got talked out of it for a while. But one woman at a time, one child at a time, one home at a time, we can build this life back. We can bring back the traditions and the skills and honor the women who keep the homes. If this episode resonated with you, share it, send it to a woman in your life who is exhausted and doesn't know why, who is achieving everything and feels nothing, who is ready to ask the question nobody told her she was allowed to ask. Did I actually want this? And if not, what do I want instead?